While the murder of YBC Josh was a devastating loss to the members of YBC, their rivals would soon be suffering a loss of their own after the killing of a teenager by the name of Buddy. The war would continue to escalate into the end of 2020, while numerous shootouts were happening between YBC and their various rivals, including Sydney from 39th Street. Other young members of YBC would be seemingly lurking in the streets, desperate to catch more of their ops lacking, ultimately leading to more senseless murders of seemingly harmless people. The next tragedy would strike on Christmas Eve, when on December the 24th, 2020, police responded to the 1800 block of Wynwood Road after receiving a report of a person with a gun. They would attend the scene and find Daewoo Naishorn Struggs, aka Woo Biddy, age 20, on the ground. He had been shot several times in the torso, and he would unfortunately be pronounced dead at 11:46 AM that day. He was actually an aspiring comedian, allegedly even filming a post for social media when he was killed, but some have suggested that actually he was killed after previously dissing his ops on social media, with prison YouTuber and snitch exposer 1090 Jake breaking down the case on his channel and showing the live that Scruggs was filming when he was shot.
He said, "These West dudes want to be my ops. Man, I only deal with Frankfurt shit. It don't involve me if it ain't Frankfurt."
When we shoot, you can't run when we shoot. I'm gonna smoke you. Real shit.
So obviously he has something going on in his own city and going on with West Philly, but still decided to walk through there when a man seen on video walked up with a gun out. Skinny can be heard exchanging words with the shooter. It sounds as if he's speaking from behind a mask, but you can hear him say, "What's up? Go ahead, bro." And you can even hear the shooter respond back saying, "Sup." Skinny quickly said, "We on live." And you can hear the panic in his voice as the shooter raised the gun.
What's up? Go ahead, bro. Bro, go ahead, I'm live.
6 shots can be heard on video while Skinny falls to the ground on the side of 1871 Winewood Road. Police found him lying in the grass, shot multiple times to the chest and head, and 15 minutes after the shooting, Skinny was pronounced dead at the hospital.
A heartbreaking news report on the crime would be broadcast following the incident.
Robbed of one of her greatest joys, Spring Scruggs keeps reliving the murder of her grandson on Christmas Eve.
And I lost my heart. That was my baby.
Daewoo Scruggs loved his family. His last Instagram post was of him and his dad, who died 3 years ago.
1, 2 o'clock.
Daewoo also loved to make people feel good.
Daewoo would like hype me up. Like I would be in my room. He would come in there. He would hype me up. He like says, "You look cute."
The 20-year-old was an aspiring comedian. Now, the gunman who killed him has brought heartbreak to his family.
But he always knew like he had enemies. Like he always knew people didn't like him. He always knew. He's like, I never expected nobody to kill him.
Family members say Daewoo was walking to the bus stop to go to work at Home Depot. He got here to the intersection of Wynwood and Malvern. He was recording a video on social media. Then police say minutes later, an unknown man walked up to Daewoo and got into an argument with him. Seconds later, he pulled out a gun and shot Daewoo. It was all caught on video.
And ultimately, the suspect was caught on surveillance cameras committing the crime too, and it wouldn't take long for the authorities to identify him as 16-year-old Amin Hurst.
A new surveillance video from Philadelphia police shows the moments which led to a Christmas Eve murder in Overbrook. The gunman, wearing a dark-colored puffy coat, following the victim, Daewoo Scruggs, along the 1800 block of Wynwood Road. As the two go off screen, you hear a barrage of gunshots, the suspect then running away. 20-year-old Daewoo, an aspiring comedian, left for dead. Police are offering a $20,000 reward for his death.
However, before the cops would catch their suspect, Hurst would continue to commit violence in his community. On March the 11th, 2021, at 3:04 PM, police responded to a shooting on the 1400 block of North 76th Street. Before police got there, 4 people who had been shot made their way to a local hospital. Naquan Smith, 24, who was shot in the chest, arm and shoulder, was pronounced dead at 3:12 PM, and Tamir Brown, aka Lil Mir from 0 to the 4, age 16, who had been shot several times, was pronounced dead at 7:48 PM. 2 more shooting victims, both 19 years of age, were placed in critical condition, but ultimately survived.
It was around 3 o'clock this afternoon when police began getting calls about shots fired and people shot behind Woodcrest Garden condos at 1400 North 76th Street in Overbrook. Skyfox broadens out the scene for us. Police at 2 different locations in the neighborhood, both littered with dozens of evidence markers. It's unclear exactly how many shots in all were fired or how many people were shooting. Police say a 24 24-year-old man shot died shortly after at the hospital. The others listed in extremely critical condition include men and teens ages 30, 19, and 16 years old.
Allegedly, this shooting that claimed 2 young lives was also carried out by Amin Hurst. Lil Mir from 0 to the 4 was actually a rising rapper, and fans on Reddit were shocked by the news of his passing. And he had songs with other well-known rappers from his area like Lil Bucks. Lil Mir had appeared in an interview the previous year where he spoke on West Philly streets being a war zone and being a member of 0 to the 4.
Lil Mir, 0 to the 4.
So it's a lot going on in the city, you know, current times, you know, a lot of killing going on.
Bro, I don't know how to put it. If you know, you know. That shit been bad, you hear me? That shit been bad. If you know, you know. That shit been bad, though. Where's the all my know? Been bad. That's all I can say.
You a young artist coming up. I mean, you 16, know what I mean? So you real young, know what I mean? Fresh in the game, know what I mean? So you say you from, you know, 64th Street, y'all call that 0 to the 4. I mean, explain that for the people when
it's 60th and Lansdowne, and 64th and College.
All right, okay, yeah, go ahead.
My ties for real. We all grew up together, you dig me? When we was young, it wasn't nothing like how it is now. Just know it's a war zone in the whole west side. That's all I'm gonna say, is a war zone. Every block in West Philadelphia.
He would explain that life got rough for him after his mother died when he was in 2nd grade, and that he's been in the streets providing for himself ever since.
I wouldn't lie, like, it got rough as I got older. Like, when my mom died in 2012, I think I was in, like, 2nd grade or something. That's when it started getting rough, because she used to bust her ass for me, whatever. And give me that shit, you know? It just got bad when she left me and shit. That's all.
Clearly, he was himself deep involved in the gang war, ending that interview saying F the ops.
All right, man, is there anything else you want to let the people know? Anything else you want to clarify, address, you know what I mean, before we get up?
We not gonna see no names, man. Free the free Ghost, free DK, free Simon.
So after this tragic double murder, Amin Hurst was building a formidable reputation in the streets, having killed 3 people in less than a year, but it wouldn't be long until he claimed another life. As I mentioned previously, one of YBC's most dangerous enemies was a 39th Street shooter by the name of Sid. Members from YBC would receive false info that Sid was getting out of prison on March the 18th, 2021, and a man named Rodney Hargrove was killed within an hour of leaving the prison in a case of mistaken identity. After this, the police would finally catch up with Amin Hurst and unravel the details of his deadly crime spree. On March the 20th, 2021, Amin Hurst was arrested and charged as an adult with the murder of Daewoo Nashawn Scruggs that took place on Christmas Eve 2020. Then, on April the 21st, Hurst was re-arrested and charged in the double murder of both Naquan Smith and Tamir Brown. And then finally, he was charged with the final murder of Rodney Hargrove outside the prison on the 28th of April 2021.
Tonight, Philadelphia police say this 16-year-old is responsible for a months-long reign of gun violence which left 4 people dead, including a man who was a victim of mistaken identity. Investigators say Armin Hurst was the gunman who shot and killed a 20-year-old man on Christmas Eve. In March, they say he was responsible for killing 2 people in a quadruple shooting. And a week after that shooting, investigators say Hurst shot and killed Rodney Hargrove, just after Hargrove was released from jail. Police say Hargrove was not the intended victim.
An NBC 10 Philadelphia news report would air identifying Amin Hurst and the 4 murders he had allegedly committed.
Police now say 16-year-old Amin Hurst was the one who pulled the trigger on that aspiring comedian. On March 20th, Hurst was arrested and charged in that murder. But in between Scruggs' murder and those charges, there was another shooting. That time, 4 people were shot in a car. 2 of them died. Last week, Hurst was charged with those murders, and while he was behind bars, police took a closer look at a gun connected to him. That's when they discovered that gun was connected to another unsolved murder that we told you about as breaking news right after it happened in March. A 20-year-old man who'd just been released from jail was gunned down on the grounds of the Curran-Fromhold Correctional Facility. Police say it appears as though that man was the tragic victim of mistaken identity. Now, Hurst, he may be a teenager, but it certainly did take some time for the authorities to track him down. The fugitive team, as well as the U.S. Marshals, they were searching for him. They say he was aware that they were looking for him, and he was going from place to place. He is now in custody and facing charges as an adult.
However, the the police wouldn't easily take him off the streets, and in one of the wildest turn of events I've ever seen in a case so serious, Amin Hurst actually managed to escape jail and go on the run 2 years later. The 19-year-old convict executed a daring escape along with another convict named Nasir Grant. News reports would break down the facts, explaining that the combination of an unrepaired fence, switched off motion sensors, and a sleeping guard allowed Hurst and Grant to slip away undetected.
The DA showed video of Amin Hurst and Nasir Grant walking out of their cells at around 8:30 at night and then crawling on their bellies to a door to escape. Kesner says another inmate who was also out of his cell was their lookout. Kesner said it only took them 90 seconds to get out. He also revealed that a hole in the fence at the jail that the pair was able to sneak through had been there for about 7 weeks. Kesner says prison officials knew about the hole, looked at it days before the escape, but nothing was done. We have a crew going through more of Kesner's revelations, including why the counts of prisoners were the same after the escape and how officials really learned 2 inmates had made it out. That's coming up starting today at 4 o'clock.
According to later reporting, once the escapees got through the fence, they jumped in an Uber and headed to South Philly, apparently all with the help of a woman and fellow gang member who organized their transition into hiding. Following the escape, a manhunt was launched in an effort to capture the escaped convicts, with a reward being offered as reported on CBS News Philadelphia.
Developing this morning, an active manhunt for 2 inmates who escaped from the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center. Take a look. As the search pushes forward, law enforcement officials are looking for answers about how the pair were able to break out in the first place.
The first one is 18-year-old Amin Hurst. He has been charged with 4 separate murders, including one right here on State Road in Northeast Philadelphia back on in March of 2021. The other inmate is 24-year-old Nasir Grant, who has been charged with drug and gun offenses. Now, according to the Department of Prisons commissioner, these 2 inmates were housed in the same unit of the correctional center, but they were not cellmates. She says they were both accounted for at 8:30 on Sunday night, but then they missed each of the next 3 head counts, one at 11 o'clock on Sunday night, and then 2 more at 3 and 7 o'clock on Monday morning. She says it appears that they were both at the prison during those times, but she is wondering why they weren't listed as missing since they weren't present during those head counts. Mayor Jim Kenney calls it a major failure of our prison system.
The number one responsibility right now is to get these guys off the street. And any information that any folks can provide us, there's, I believe, a reward on each of them for $20,000 each for information leading to their arrest. So that's job number 1. Job number 2 is to get the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections in here and assess the system. Clearly, the system's screwed up, and people didn't do what they're supposed to do. It's clear.
The escape was a scandal for the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center and led to a review of the facility by the Department of Corrections.
According to this report, the prison did submit a plan of action, and these observations were expected to be addressed. Repairs to the outside wall were scheduled for spring of this year. Now, the mayor said today that the prison is now under review by the State Department of Corrections.
Somebody conducted 3 bed checks that either can't count or could count and did something wrong.
Well, earlier this month, last week actually, the police said that the inmates were caught on video cutting a hole in the fence to make their break and were not noticed as missing until the next day. That's despite 3 head counts by prison staff.
In the time the fugitives were on the run, Philly residents were said to be living in fear, terrified of the prospect of a quadruple murderer walking amongst them.
Where we are is about 2 to 3 blocks from that prison where those inmates escaped. And if you look around me, I'm in a playground. Right next to me is a recreation center, and directly across the street are homes. We knocked on several of those doors, and neighbors say this whole situation is scary. In this Holmesburg neighborhood, residents have their eyes out for 2 wanted men.
Have you seen these 2 faces?
I've seen them on the news, yes.
Get a good look.
The one guy looks real familiar.
He's referring to 18-year-old Amin Hurst, accused of 4 murders. The other is 24-year-old Nasir Grant, who was being held on drug and gun charges. Police say the 2 inmates escaped from the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center Sunday night. The prison is within miles of schools, playgrounds, and neighborhoods like these, where neighbors we spoke to say they're feeling a bit uneasy about what happened in their backyard.
What are the police doing about it? What is, the mayor doing about that? Because people are at risk. Now you're talking about potential violent people being out on the street.
It doesn't make me feel comfortable, seeing that someone can break out of a prison, especially with someone that has murder charges and are really just a danger to society.
It is scary, you know, but I feel like when they escape from the prison, I don't think they want to stay in the neighborhood.
Most tell us living so close to a prison has never been an issue until now.
Somebody dropped the ball.
For these neighbors, what happened is only adding another layer of concern for crime in Philadelphia.
Soon, District Attorney Larry Krasner would comment around the time of a hearing on the escape, warning about failings in the prison system, with staff saying that they were suffering due to understaffing.
Staffing shortages, cameras that don't work, motion detectors that have been turned off, and a guard who is asleep. The DA says all of this aided in the escape of two dangerous men. Larry Krasner says he's not blaming anyone, as he pointed out. There were multiple failures, he says, that puts the city in danger.
Canada geese, in the absence of a dog, were landing in the dog run. And when they landed in the dog run, they were setting off the sensors. And when they were setting off the sensors, eventually someone decided to turn them off.
And while those sensors, the DA says, were not picking up movement, they were helpful, as the inmates used them to climb up over the fence.
After his escape, people on the Philly Wiki subreddit would speculate on what they would do if they were in Hurst's shoes. Some said he should go to Florida and flee for Cuba or another country with bad relations with the US, with people saying he's not making it out the country and that he should get off the grid. Others said that he has no escape and that US Marshals would find him on the moon. Some people pointed out that whoever helped him is in big trouble, while others said that he was probably just in one of his homies' basements and probably looking for the person that killed his sister in the parking lot last year. Unfortunately for Hurst, he didn't have the creativity that some of these Redditors did, and it turned out that he wasn't actually hiding far from where he came from. And just 10 days after his daring escape, he would be taken into custody by US Marshals in a standoff caught on camera and broadcast on Fox 29 Philadelphia. Following the arrest, NBC 10 Philadelphia would report on the capture, broadcasting the footage of Hurst getting in a car just before his arrest.
Pictures show US Marshals officers taking Armin Hurst into custody early this morning, 10 days after the 18-year-old and another man escaped from a Philadelphia prison. Home security camera shows what appears to be Hurst walking near 61st and Washington Streets. This is in the Cobbs Creek section of West Philly. Robert Clark with the U.S. Marshal's Office says Hurst got into a vehicle along with two family members. As that vehicle pulled off, officers went after it. Both inmates now, Hurst and Nazir Grant, are back in custody after officials say they cut a hole through a fence at the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center and escaped.
It's something that we take pride in, that in 10 days we were able to get two escapees in custody without any use of force.
Apparently, he was found at his aunt's house, with people in disbelief that he would decide to stay in Philly after his escape. His brother and 3 other people would be charged for assisting the escape, as reported on CBS News Philadelphia, which explained that someone from his own family actually called the police with a tip.
After 10 days on the run and a search that spanned 3 different states, tonight Amir Hurst is back behind bars.
The people here are saying, Cobbs Creek, how could this happen?
Wednesday night, community leaders went door to door talking to concerned Cobbs Creek residents after they learned 18-year-old Amin Hurst was arrested by U.S. Marshals near 61st Street and Washington Avenue more than a week after escaping from a Philadelphia correction center. During a news conference, Supervisory Deputy U.S. Marshal Robert Clark says they got a break in the case when someone from Hurst's family called them Tuesday night.
We identified Hurst coming out of a house on the 6100 block of Washington Avenue and enter a vehicle with 2 family members. At that time, a vehicle containment was conducted as the vehicle tried to pull off the block, and Hurst was identified and taken into custody without incident.
Hurst's brother, Amir Woods, was also arrested on Wednesday for helping Hurst and 24-year-old Nasir Grant escape. Grant was recaptured in North Philadelphia last Thursday. 3 additional people have also been charged in aiding with the escape. Tonight, the investigation continues.
And Amin Hurst would now be facing escape charges on top of the original 4 murders, with phone calls organizing the escape being recorded and played in court along with a video of the escape.
4 of the 6 people facing charges in connection with the Philadelphia prison escape appeared in court today. Amin Hurst and Nasir Grant escaped from the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center on May 7th of last year. 4 people, Michael Abrams, Yanni Stalling, Jose Flores Huerta, and Amir Woods, are facing charges for their alleged roles in the escape and the aftermath. The details of the case were laid out during today's hearing. The prosecution played 2 calls. They say Hurst made to Abrams and Stalling from prison right before he escaped. Hurst was being held on charges of murder. In the calls, Hurst tells them, quote, "I'm going to get the expletive out of here." The prosecution then showed video of the two men escaping the facility. Flores Huerta, a fellow prisoner, stood by and watched as they left their rooms, crawled through a common area, out the door, and then through a hole in a fence. Once out of the correctional center, surveillance video shows the two prisoners get into an Uber ordered by Stalling. The prosecution says cell phone data shows Stalling, Abrams, and Amir Woods, who is the older brother of Amin Hurst, knew about the escape and hindered the apprehension of both men. The prosecution says a motor vehicle search for Amir Woods' car shows he drove to New York the day after the escape. Officials previously said his younger brother made it to New York City and back to Philadelphia before he was recaptured. Woods, Abrams, and Flores Huerta will be arraigned next month on charges including escape and conspiracy.
The woman who helped him organize the Uber would actually end up getting 11 to 23 months in prison for assisting the escape.
A woman has admitted to helping two inmates escape from a Philadelphia prison last year. Ziani Stallings was sentenced to 11.5 to 23 months in jail after pleading guilty yesterday. Prosecutors say Stallings helped Nasir Grant and Amin Hurst break out of the Philadelphia Industrial Correctional Center in May of 2023.
Ultimately, Amin Hurst is still awaiting trial for his 4 murder charges. And considering how brazen he'd been not only with the murders, but also the bold escape, it wouldn't surprise me if the judge really threw the book at him. But ultimately, even with one of the most prolific shooters off the streets, authorities were far from stopping the violence. And yet more murders would play out over the summer of 2021, with yet more YBC members being tied to the crimes.